For this video, I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm going to run two proverbs together because they just work together. Proverb 7 and Proverb 8 work together, and one is attacking with 8 checkers is weak, the other is attacking with 10 checkers is strong. And I'm also skipping Proverb 6 because I think Proverb 6 will make more sense having done Proverb 7 and 8. So if you have if you're wondering where Proverb 6 is, it's on its way in terms of making these videos. But if you, this might be just makes slightly more sense to do this video first and then go back to Proverb 6. So we're looking at attacking with 8 checkers or attacking with 10 checkers. And there's a key term that's used in backgammon that I need to introduce you to first. And it's called the zone. We talk about having a certain number of men or checkers in the zone. And if you're not used to it, you might be wondering, well, what is the zone? So effectively the zone means our home board, which as usual is the bottom right, and also our outer board, which is the bottom left. So basically our side of the board. And we look at how many checkers we have on our side of the board. So you'll hear analysts start talking about, well, we only had 9 checkers in the zone or something. What they mean is we'd only got 9 of our white checkers on our side of the board, and it's in the zone because it's attacking. It's in the attacking zone, putting pressure. So all the way along that bottom there, if we've checkers there, they're powerful ammunition to be able to hit black's blots, to be able to make points, to be able to block black in. And so there's a situation, for instance, where if you want to count on our side of the board and just test yourself, we have 9 checkers in the zone there. That one in the furthest bottom left is a little bit isolated, but it's still ammunition that we can use. Black on the top has 10 checkers in the zone and is therefore in quite a strong attacking position. And this is what Mitchie's Proverbs talk about. He says, attacking with 8 checkers is weak. We don't have enough ammunition. And bear in mind that we start, looking at that, our zone, we start each game with 8 checkers in the zone, 5 on our 6 point and 3 more on our 8 point. And those 8 checkers on their own aren't a strong enough attacking force to really be a threat to black. We need to get more ammunition into the zone. And then the converse of Proverb 7 is Proverb 8, which says attacking with 10 checkers is strong. And again, I suppose the thing to emphasize there, I've just highlighted there, is it's attacking. And really, there's a onus on us. If we have 10 checkers in the zone, we should attack. We should be pushing on if we have 10 checkers in the zone. So in this situation here, just to give an example here, early game situation, look down at white, and if you can count the checkers there, we have 10 checkers there in our zone. One way you can look at it is we've got 5 checkers on the other side of the board. We all have 15 checkers in total, so a quick way is just looking 15 minus whatever's on the far side of the board is what we have. And then if you look at our opponent, black even has we have possibly a nice distribution and not as stacked as black, but black has also got 10 checkers in the zone, so we do need to be careful about black's attack as well. And it just struck me that Mitchie doesn't clarify this, but this idea of attacking with 10 is strong and 8 is weak, this applies to us in defense as well when we're trying to escape, every bit as much as when we're attacking. And there'll be more proverbs about splitting later on in the Mitchie book, but Mitchie starts with an example that is looking at us trying to escape. So we're white, we're up on the top right quadrant, we have 2 back men there, and we're wondering about, should we try and escape? Now you might say, well look, black has got 3 points made in their home board, they're quite strong on their home board, black, and we might need to be safe. And you might say, well look, I can unstack, which is always a good thing, and if you look in the top left quadrant of the 5 checkers on our 13 point, I can bring one of them down with the 3, and maybe, for safety's sake, move it on to the 8 point. You've heard me say before about 13-8 is sometimes not a great move. In this situation, it's not bad because you've brought more ammunition into the zone. You now have 9 attacking checkers. But let's just go back to the start and look at black's position. Black, yes, has made 3 points on their home board, but they still only have 8 checkers in the zone. So while they don't have the ammunition there, it's a good philosophy to have, is that while our opponent doesn't have the ammunition in their zone, we should try and escape. So we can come forward with the 3, and yes, we can still unstack with the 2. So looking at the 5 checkers in our 13 point on the top left, we can bring one of them down to the 2. And that way, we've 9 checkers in the zone, we're starting to escape, and it's the right thing to do. And I've just put very often I'll just put the figures here just so you can see what the right move is. Now, here's a different situation. We've rolled a 3 and a 1, and you might say, well, look, Black's got 10 checkers in the zone there, so maybe I'll play safe and I'll take my blot in the bottom left there on the 8 point, and I'll move it forward 3 so it's safe. And look, we'll split at the back because we want to get moving. The big thing is we shouldn't split when Black has 10 checkers. So Black, if you look at the top in their attacking zone, has 10 checkers, and by splitting, we're now giving them a chance to hit us. And they have enough ammunition there that if they hit us, they can keep us there. When they've only 8 checkers, they might hit us, but we can escape. But with 10 checkers, it's usually considered strong enough to be a real threat to us. So we don't want to do that split. Instead, the one thing we're not going to do is split at the back against 10 checkers. Instead, look at the 5 checkers on our midpoint. We're going to bring one of them down with the 3, and just the best thing to do is just bring it forward one more, and it's starting to put a pressure on our 3 point, and we've that extra checker in the zone. So that's the difference, I suppose, about whether we should split at the back. Is very often to do with, well, how many checkers does our opponent have there? But this also can apply in attack, and Mitchie gives this is Mitchie's attacking scenario. We rolled a 4 and a 1, and with the 1 we can come down and hit from our 6 point to our 5 point. And there's just a little quote in Mitchie's book that I just think is really helpful and instructive. He was saying that it's never wrong to hit loose when you get a 1 and our opponent has a checker on our 5 point. It's never wrong to hit them off that point. So if you look at the situation that we were facing there, our opponent has a blot on our 5 point. They're trying to make our 5 point. We know about fighting for the good point. We've rolled a 1. It's never wrong to use that 1 to hit that checker. But what do we do with the 4? Well, we could bring a checker down from the midpoint and kind of more ammunition in the zone. Not bad. But just put that back there for a second. Count how many checkers do we have in our zone already. We've 10 in the zone already, so we're strong already. And don't forget that when we're talking about attacking, we mean hit your opponent if you can at all. So in this situation, just going through it again, we hit with the 1, but we can also use the 4 to hit another black checker. So we hit with the 1 and we go on and hit black again. We've got the 10 checkers. Like Black could roll a 1, and we're kind of going back to the start. That happens. But if they don't, we've got lots of ammunition down there to close them out and really kind of put them under pressure while we escape the rest of our checkers. So it puts us in if we don't get hit, we're in a beautifully powerful position. So that's the reason we take that risk. Because we have the 10 checkers, we push on. And as you can see, it's a big blunder not to do that. Dan Rivera on Backgammon is beautiful on YouTube. He's a nice little mnemonic that I think works really well. He kind of says, look, traffic lights. It's red. If you've got 8 or fewer checkers in the zone, don't be attacking, don't be blitzing. If you've got 9 checkers, we're kind of amber zone where we'll have a look at it or not. And green, you've got to go for it. You've got to go. And he uses this example, which I think is quite clever. Dan Rivera is great. He always kind of takes a position and then tweaks it and just sees how does it change things. So in the first situation where we're down attacking, we've got Black has 2 blots on the home board. You could say, well, we'll use the 2 to hit Black and then maybe bring another one down. But if you think about it, we started with 8 checkers in the zone. We shouldn't be red. The red traffic light means stop. Don't be doing that. Instead, we're better off in this situation just bringing a checker nice and safely down to our 8 point. Give us a 9th checker in the zone, and we might be able to hit them next time. But we certainly don't try and behave recklessly when we haven't enough ammunition there. But that was the situation. If you look at that was the situation we faced there with 8 checkers in the zone. What if we took one of the middle checkers there, on the big stack of 5 checkers there, and brought one of them down to the 9 point? Does that make a difference? Well, it does. The right thing to do in this stage is to hit, and you've got a choice. You can just move one forward 3, or put back there for a second, or you can bring another one down. I like that because You have lots of builders there. If black doesn't hit us, we're loads of flexibility to try and cover that point that block we have in our home board. However, it is if black does hit us, we've lots of blocks lying out there vulnerable. So it's fractionally better to do the tidier one and bring one in from the 9 to the 6 point. But there's much of a muchness in it. But that was with 9 checkers in the zone. Let's take another of those checkers. So the 4 checkers that are now in our midpoint, let's take another one of them and put it in our 6 point. We now have 10 in the zone. And with 10 in the zone, I'm not even going to show you it. Basically, we must attack. It's a big mistake not to attack. And if we took that situation and then let's take one of black's blocks in our home board and put it in the bar, it's now a big blunder. Anything that doesn't involve hitting, it's a massive blunder. 267 millipoint blunder down the bottom there if we don't hit. So it becomes more and more important that we're aggressive if we have the situation. The other thing Dan Rivera did, he said, well, look, maybe the reason we can be so attacking is because look at the top there. Our opponent hasn't had a chance to develop their home board. So if we do get hit back, there's nothing to worry about. So Dan Rivera played around with it a bit and said, well, instead of having our opponent having a kind of a useless position in their own board, what if we give them quite a nice, strong board? How will that affect things? Now if we hit, we have a lot more to lose by being hit. But the interesting thing was, even with black having that very strong home board, if we were to be hit, the pattern was exactly the same. With 8 checkers in the zone, we shouldn't be attacking. With 9 checkers in the zone, it's a toss-up whether we should attack or not. And with 10 checkers in the zone, we must hit. And again, it's a sizable mistake, a 50 millipoint error if we don't hit. So even with black having that tremendous home board, it's a mistake not to hit. Finally, another point that Dan Rivera just pointed out was sometimes these rules are great, but sometimes you just need to temper it with, well, where are we at in the game? And sometimes we're so far ahead that we don't need to take any risks. We're so strong, we're just trying to finish off the game and win it. So here's an example that he gave, which I think is a very instructive one. We roll a 3 and a 2. We now have 12 checkers in the zone. We have tons of ammunition in the zone. And should we be hitting? Should we use the 2 to hit the black blot in our home board? And the answer is very strongly no. We don't. We're trying to win the game here. The game is effectively won. What we don't want is black having any chance to take us out of it. So instead, and I put this in, by the way, to actually myself, and I played around, if it was at a gammon go position where we desperately needed a gammon, would it make a difference? And it doesn't. The XG is very strong that we're so strong here, we just need to finish the game out. So we use the 3, we bring the 3 down from the midpoint to make a point safe. We use the 2 to make the other point safe. And we're just focusing on getting in nice and safely, and we're not worried about leaving any remote chance for black to have a competition with us. And any kind of play that doesn't involve the safety play there, as you can see, is a massive, massive blunder. So finishing off, I'm going to give you a couple of positions to test yourself. I'm taking it from a book. My favorite backgammon book is this book, Conquering Backgammon. It's just a beautiful book. It's so well presented and so clear to read. For me, I said it's always my favorite. And in this, Ed Rosenblum comes up with 2 positions. And if you want to pause the video now and say, how would you play 4-1? And assuming you've unpaused, well, look at the number of checkers in the bottom there. We've 10 checkers in the bottom, 10 checkers in the zone. So we need to be aggressive and attack. So we attack look at our checker on the 7 point. We bring one of them in and hit the black. And then we hit on. We've got another chance. Our 1 will also hit. So we've 10 in the zone. So let's just hit the hell out of black where we can. And anything else, again, is significant blunder. And the other position, again, if you want to pause, and assuming you've unpaused, well, we kind of come in with we've a checker on the bar. We might as well hit when we come in. If we come in with the 2 and send black onto the bar, the question is, do we hit 6 to 2 and double hit? And I want you to stop and just think, well, do we? Well, count how many checkers we have in the zone. 7. We don't even have 8. We're rubbish in the zone. So don't even think about it. Put that back there. We'll come in with the bonus of hitting with the 2. And then we just bring one down to the midpoint. At least we've now got 8 in the zone. So no risky moves unnecessarily there. And as you see, a huge blunder, if you start doing anything that involves hitting in our home board. That's it for Proverbs 7 and 8. I'll be doing Proverbs 6 shortly.